My name is Russ Drury, as was just introduced. I'm from Zeplin. And today's session, we're going to talk about streamlining the design to delivery workflow. Now, this is very much an interactive session. I'm going to require a lot of audience participation. Get your phones out, because we're also going to be doing a lot of polls as well, okay? Now, if anyone's been to SeaWorld before or any water-based theme park, you know there's a splash zone, okay? You are all in my splash zone. So I am probably going to pick on you. If you raise your hand, that will make it easier for me. If you don't raise your hand, I'm just going to come up and come pick on you, and you can help us out. Now, the purpose of this session is for you all to share. This is a networking session. I know how difficult it can be sometimes when you're at a conference, you don't know anyone, you may be here with your group of colleagues, your friends, and you don't get to meet as many people as perhaps you would like to. So this is an opportunity for you all to share. Sharing is caring. We're going to learn from each other today about how you do design to delivery workflows and how you implement that in your own organizations. So the answers that you give will help us to move on to the next questions and so on and so forth. Now, I'm looking for a clicker, so I can click through the slides. It's just coming. As I said, we're going to be having a number of polls here, so grab your phones. If you haven't got them in your hand, use the QR code. Okay. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you very much. At some points, I might stand behind this pillar, because this helps me not get dazzled by the lights. So the first question we're going to ask, just for a bit of context here, is to understand how are your design and dev teams structured? Now, this is different and unique across a lot of organizations. And you might do it by product if you have a multiple product strategy. You might do it by brand if you are, again, multiple brands. You might do it functionally, developers, squad model, whatever, okay? So I want you to go ahead, vote on these, and I'm then going to start asking some questions, and we're going to have raising of hands, and I think we have someone with a microphone who's running around who's going to help us as well. Okay, so it looks like a lot of people are cross-functional. And if by cross-functional you're thinking of like this squad model kind of thing, I'd love to hear how that's working as well. Pros and cons, the benefits of all of this as well. Okay, the vote's still coming in, but it looks pretty heavily skewed towards cross-functional and product organization, okay? So we've got some runners here with mics. Raise your hands if you are organizing cross-functionally. Let's hear from you first of all. Okay, let's start with, and you can pick random people, Rory. I don't have a preference. Tell us about your organization of your cross-functional model here.
Yeah, so I work for SSE Electricity. I manage the team. We work in a cross-functional team. It slightly changed the structure because before we were part of the Scrum team, but now it's all under IT, and the UX team is under product. However, we have home manager and business manager, so we have commercial and domestic customers, and the team works for all portfolio for SSE Electricity. And even though we are not part of the Scrum team, we give support to the dev team from the start to the end. So it's end-to-end process with them. So, okay. But we work ahead of them, so like 2 or 4 sprints, depends on the project. So
excellent.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much for kicking us off. Who's next? Who's also doing this cross-functionally? Raise a hand, find a mic. Okay, go for it, Rory.
Hello, I work for Swiss Bank as designer. We had a similar model like the previous speaker, but we found that we're too influenced by the devs, too much pragmatism, not enough spotlight on the researchers. So now we split even more. So there are some designers with the devs like before, but we have additionally strategy department where half of designers are and all the researchers. So we needed this change. Now, let's see how that works.
Okay, I'm going to ask you another question. How many people are in a constituted group, a team? How many people do you have in total?
Strategy, per product, there are 4 people, more or less.
Okay. Okay, good. Great. Do we have someone over here? Yes, in the center.
Yes, So previously, we were organized as a centralized UX team. So we were kind of having a really good control over what we are doing over a product. Now we are split it up and ended up in like embedded feature teams. But still, some of us are thinking like cross-product and sitting on a big knowledge, right? So some of us like here, they are focusing just on their features, right, and their feature teams, and the other persons are really trying to break out from that kind of focused area and just thinking more broader. So that's kind of cross-functional. And for the future, what is waiting for us is like more like cross-product, cross-functional.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm really struggling to kind of decide: are we just product, or are we also heading to the cross-functional and product? Yeah,
Okay.
That's where we are now.
So we have a bit of merging, a bit of blurred lines here. Cross-functional at the moment, but moving into more product, but it will be cross-functional cross-product.
Yeah, so it's going to be cross-product lines and everything. So that's, I'm really want to head more for that, like for the broader future, not for the now, right?
Yeah.
So.
And what's leading to that change? Has something changed that's leading you to change the structure? Is the organization growing? Is there challenges in the way that you've got it structured at the moment?
Scale-up phase. We had a scale-up phase previous year. So kind of we were working really fast. And then we kind of messed up a lot of details. And now we need to kind of clean up after ourselves. So I guess that's why we got put in embedded teams.
Okay.
But on the other side, yes, so scale up, big growth and employee level.
Okay.
Big growth in customer level, or
Okay.
like customers who we got in. And also it's a top-down decision that we should have like a really compact, good customer and user experience through product lines.
So being driven by customer experience as well.
Yes.
Love
yes,
that. Okay.
yes.
Okay, let's go on to another one. I want to hear from some people who are organizing by product, okay? It sounds like there might be some blurring and merging potentially of these. Who's organizing their design, dev, and delivery teams by product? Raise your hands. I want to hear from you. I know there's a lot of you because you said so on the screen. Okay. Person on the front here, go for it.
So how are we organized by the product? Yeah, so we have overall missions. And then within that mission, then we have specific streams. So we'll have teams organized, like I oversee app design. So within that, we're organized by search, and then by growth, and then by initiatives, which is basically just like a filter for everything else that doesn't fit into the products.
Okay.
And then I think there's also sell, which is part of the seller mission. So those are the streams, and within that we have dev, PM, design.
So it sounds like quite a complex structure. How many people are in your organization? Because there'll be some people sitting here thinking, well, that sounds like a lot. But if you tell me there's hundreds of people, thousands of people, that might explain it.
I mean, including everyone, including sales, which is a big part, it's like 600-ish.
Okay,
Yeah.
so not huge.
Yeah, not huge.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. Anyone else want to have a comment on organization? Is there a right way to do it? Do you feel that you've cracked it? No comments. Okay. Go on. Oh, sorry, go on the side here.
Yeah? Oh, no, okay, never mind. Sorry.
No, not to worry. We'll come back to you. Okay, let's go on to the next one then. I'm interested to know how is work structured for these teams? And again, get your phones out. There's a number of options here. Is it design works far ahead? I think we heard that a little bit a moment ago, where you work a couple of iterations or a couple of cycles ahead, a couple of weeks ahead. One of the options, design works a sprint ahead of dev. Design and dev work on things together. Now, this is the nubbin of the session today. I'd love to hear where design and dev are almost in sync in the same cycle and delivering and designing at the same time. And then the last option is design is involved after dev has started. Shudder. Hopefully, hey, if that is your answer, I'd love to know. We have one person saying yes. Wow, okay. So it looks like predominantly in the first answer there, most people in design are working ahead of developers, which is great, far ahead. I'd love to know how far ahead and if there's any challenges with that. And then it looks like the next two answers are neck and neck. So for the one or two people, because I don't know how many responses there were, that replied the fourth one, that design is involved after dev has started. You feel brave enough to put your hand up? I want to hear about how that's working. Come on, we're all intrigued by this one. Go on, I want to hear from you. How is this happening, that you're doing the work after dev has started?
Well, we are working on the digital twin product, and which is very big scale. So when the UX, we come into this company, we are actually kind of part in the QA, if you guys... Yeah, so dev already made something, and they think that's a brilliant, solution. But they not really think about user at that moment. So they get a lot of feedback from the user how terrible your product is, and then they hire all the designer come in. They're trying to hire the consultant, the agency before. But they look at the problem and then they go too far ahead. So the developer, they couldn't deliver from their vision. So then the company decided they're going to hire in-house UXer. So when they hire us in, they just use us as QA to fix the depth or whatever user come back this terrible feedback, and then we have to fix it. Wow. So that's like 2 years ago. And now we are moving toward to maybe the third one.
Okay.
Yeah, so working about the same, but still we are trying, to change it to, of course, to the first one.
Okay.
But that's a current challenge.
Wow.
Because the mindset, they treat the designer as just make something sexy.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that's quite challenging, and we are very.
Helping them to understand there's way more than just pretty pictures on a page.
Yeah, and the beautiful prototype,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's very challenging.
Thank you for being brave enough to say that. I absolutely love that. Do we have anyone else who answered that as well, that feels brave enough to say? Go on. I'm fascinated by this. It's the least responded answer, but I want to hear this. Go for it.
So maybe a different perspective on this. I think in super under-resourced design teams, like one of the things I've tried to do is fill my developers with a sort of like design mindset a little bit. And there's just too much surface for me to cover. And obviously I'll tackle the important bits ahead of time and kind of, lay them out. But there's a lot of things where I trust people to make sensible decisions and then review them retrospectively.
Yeah.
And obviously if I had way more designers working in my team, then I would totally be moving to the left there.
Give us some context of size here. When you say short on designers,
it's me.
Okay. Have you got any open positions right now? There might be people looking.
No, that's actually a lie. 2 weeks ago, we had a second product designer start. So it's now 2 of us.
Brilliant. Congratulations. I'm sure that will help. 2 designers for how many developers? What's the ratio there?
6 or 7, yeah.
Okay. Very good. Right. Let's go back to the first answer then. The one that everyone said, or the majority, almost half of the people said here, design works far ahead of dev. I want to hear how far ahead and if there are any challenges with that. Because that's, I think, the ideal, right? And it seems to be that most people are working far enough in advance. But what challenges does that bring? And how far ahead is that? Raise your hands. I want to hear from you all. Okay. Right here on the end.
I tend to think that it's best to get UX involved in basically pretty much the start of an idea. But then the best work I've ever done is when I've worked closely with developers. So I think getting involved with them also to the start so that you can understand where they're coming from with how they're going to build it and they can understand where you're coming from is a really helpful thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I guess if it's a year-long project, you might work a few months ahead.
Okay.
Something like that, but yeah.
A few months ahead, very good. Okay. Any raises on a few months ahead? Someone else? Did you have your hand up over here? Yeah? Well, okay, we'll come to you. We'll come to you in a sec. We've got one over here. Go for it.
No, it was just way too quick. Well, basically, I'm working on internet banking, and the way we are structured is that backend development and all of the impacts on a local bank are done within my teams, but then front end is centralized within a group of banks. which means that basically front end is done way ahead of us, very often without our involvement.
Okay.
So that's why we're trying to really sneak our ways there with my colleagues who are responsible for design, and they're amazing. So that's why it helps, but we're trying to get there as soon as the development for other banks started to really have our hand on the product. And then until it came to us, it was actually years. So it depends on a feature. Sometimes it's a month, sometimes
Did you just say years ahead?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Years
Perfect,
ahead?
yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
we're working, like we're doing development for a year and a half, I think, around that time.
Wow.
And we're not yet in production, but soon, hopefully. Cross your hands. So, or sorry, fingers, yeah. So yeah.
Very good.
And there are challenges to it, obviously.
Okay, wow, okay, so we've got a year or more. Did you want to throw something in there as well? Right on the front here.
Thank you. Hi, I work at MongoDB as a database company. So we're like, since we're tech, so lots of our projects need a lot of research, and we call it blue sky. So usually we work for blue sky projects. It's 1 year or more ahead of the implementation. So that's usually we start with one engineer lead and one design lead and product lead to initiate the blue sky project. So that's the most exciting part, and then we break into quarterly plan.
Okay.
So usually at least like design deadline is at least 1 quarter ahead of the beginning of the engineering implementation starts. So actually we have a combination of those because during like in the process of a quarter, we actually have some like additional like 20% of our time that we can work on the low-hanging fruit or like ad hoc things that are happening when engineer or product or customers have like some urgent fix, so we can work together with engineer to fix those small issues.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Okay. So we've had a variety here. It's still much longer than I thought. So I want to hear some people. You were the first person who said quarterly. Okay. We work in a quarterly cycle. That's why I can kind of assimilate to that. Does anyone work in a really crashed timeline, much shorter than a quarter? Dev, design. Do you want to tell us a bit about that? And how short that difference really is?
Yeah, so I work for Piccolo Energy, where we are in renewable energy, and ideally we would be working 1 sprint ahead, so that designers would have designed what they want 1 sprint ahead. But quite often they're only speaking to the customer, last week, which means they've only got the raw materials for the design material right now. So for our current sprint, for example, which was, we planned it maybe a few days ago, we literally said, what do we want to do this sprint? And then we designed it in that session right there and then. So we're kind of halfway in between your in sync 1 and 1 sprint ahead. Yep. We want to move more to the ahead, 1 sprint ahead, but currently we're kind of a little bit in sync. So we're kind of laying down the tracks just in front of us, as we get there.
What challenges do you have? I'm curious, because that is a much shorter cycle. How long are your sprints? A couple of weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? What challenges do you have in working that, laying down the track before you get there?
It seems to work for now, but some of it is due to our customers. So when we talk to our customers aren't always available, and because we work in quite a semi-regulated environment, we work with energy, we don't always have the flexibility to do what we want. We kind of have to integrate with what our customers and how their workflows work. So we don't always have that information available. So, they're not always available, so we kind of can only build what we want for the customer when we have spoken to the customer. Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Anyone else got a short time frame in this cycle of, over here on my left, your right?
Yeah, so I work for Liberty Mutual Insurance in the fraud space. So as you know, fraud is ever changing. There's new ways to commit fraud, so we have to work really quickly. So currently we leverage models to detect the fraud, and these models get deprioritized and prioritized all the time. So I find we end up working in a very close time frame, nearly with the developers. Say, the trend this month is this, so we need to get new data points into the UI, and it's very quick. And To be honest, ideally we'd like to be the second one.
Okay.
Just given like our industry and how quickly fraud changes, but we are like sort of the green one. But you know, yeah, that's our goal.
I've heard that a lot, especially in financials, in pharma as well, where it's heavily regulated, where you have to be very responsive. That's where the much shorter timescales occur. Fraud, it sounds like, obviously, you know, you detect a new fraud or some insecurity in the system, you've got to fix that pretty quick, right?
Especially with, because we leverage AI and that's changing so quickly and the new technologies that are coming out and different models are being developed so quickly that yeah, we end up working in that short time frame. We went to production this year, so I feel like we're just ramping up really quick to try and bring in as many fraud models as we can.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to throw another question in that's not up on the slide. If you ever have an opportunity to meet with me outside of this forum, I'll ask this question because I'm fascinated by the answer. It's also a bit of research because I'm talking on the main stage tomorrow about this topic. And I don't want to give too much away, but I'm always interested as I travel Europe to speak to people to hear about what is the most complex part of your design to delivery workflow. And that's what I'd like to ask you here before we have time for another question. What is the most complex part of the work that you do in your design to delivery and working with other people? Right here again in the middle.
I think, there's probably quite a few, but for me, making sure that communication is kept up between the different departments and so everyone's on the same page, that's probably the hardest.
Communication, absolutely. Anyone else? I'm struggling to see the splash zone at the back, but you're all safe for now because these lights are blinding me.
Hi. So sometimes we develop ahead of time, 1, 2, 3 sprints ahead of time.
Yep.
But then when development happens, not everything gets developed. Do you know what we agree on something and then not everything gets developed?
Yep.
So basically we get to a point that we have designs ahead of time, gets developed, and then developer asks us, this didn't work the way we were planning it, and then we have to design after the fact.
Okay.
So that's one challenge.
So you're saying the capacity planning part of it, the planning and the iterative cycle of knowing how much is going to go into a period of time, a sprint?
A very simple example. Maybe we are designing a delete functionality.
Yep.
And it doesn't stop being delete and it becomes archive.
Okay.
So the design might completely change because maybe it's easier
to
do the archive and maybe that suits us better than delete. But we have to design it after, you know.
So you're saying a changing requirement. One of the complexities there is a changing requirement that then spurs on different work.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. I like that. Yes, right in the center here.
Okay, so one big challenge is planning for the unknown.
Okay.
Right? So we do a lot of planning. We do iterations, whether quarterly or you have sprints or whatever you do.
Yep.
We plan for things that we know at the moment.
Yes.
A lot of things change, like changing requirements is one of the things. But then you also have a lot of change of context. So you're a designer, you're a PM, you're a developer. You're working on a lot of different levels of context in the same sprint, in the same day, even, in the same quarter. Yeah, you have bigger initiatives, you have small things, you have feedback from customers, you have bugs. You have a lot of things. How do you manage that on a daily basis so that it's efficient for your teams? That's where all these agile processes, lean, everything comes in place, trying to help us with that. But there's no perfect solution. I have never seen a company that has cracked that. So that's one of the biggest challenges and complexities.
Yeah, I love that. So changing velocity almost in the moment because things are uncertain and you're having to adapt. And there's a concept of shrinkflation where perhaps you're not getting as much into your delivery, you're not releasing as much because you're having to deal with everything else that comes in as well. Brilliant. Okay. Another comment quickly and then we'll finish off with, yes, over here in the center. Chap in the cap.
Thank you. So we work in iGaming and I think like we try to work on a design in a sprint ahead basis, but sometimes we need to be flexible with that because every time we try to bring a new feature, a new redesign into the product, or if it's like seasonal. Sometimes that's where the challenges come from. You need to plan ahead and be ready for that.
Yeah.
So keeping it in a flexible basis.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Do we have time for one more poll? Let's go for it. Okay, one more poll. How do you communicate design intent and requirements today? This came up earlier. Communication being a challenge, being one of the most complex things. We hear this all the time. I want to know how you're communicating design intent and requirements today. Is it documentation? Is it conversation? Design review meetings, daily stand-ups, through tools, or the dreaded no handover? Factor into this, of course, that we're now in a distributed world, working from home. Lots of things to throw into that as well. All right. This is interesting. So about a third so far are doing it through tools. Quarter are doing it through documentation. Another quarter-ish through design review meetings as well. Now, just by show of hands real quick, how many people here work from home or work in a heavily remote-based company? Okay, so quite a lot. Okay. Because I would imagine that has a huge influence on this answer, right? Maybe it was different a few years ago. So tools, let's talk about tools. What tools do you all use to communicate design, intent, and requirements? Throw your hand up. I just want to hear a tech stack and any challenges maybe you have with that as well. Raise a hand, otherwise I'll pick on the splash zone.
Hi.
There you go.
We use Figma.
Figma, yep.
Yeah.
That's your main tool for communicating everything.
No, we use Slack.
Yep.
Yeah. But Figma for the designs.
Okay. What challenges do you have with communicating everything through Figma when it comes to the requirements?
What do you think?
We use Figma, and then we use we use a ticketing system. So it depends on the client. So
ticketing. Do you use what ticketing system are you using?
For one client, it's DevOps, Azure.
Azure DevOps?
Yeah.
We use everything because we're a vendor. So, like your previous question, we do all the steps.
Nice.
We've done all of them,
So
depending on the client.
you do everything, and you use all, and I'm not being flippant about this, but you do everything, and you use all the tools.
Well, we're very flexible because we just integrate into the customer system, right? So
True. Okay.
we if they use Jira, then we use Jira, right?
Yep.
But internally, we use Figma for our designs, and then we use Slack.
Okay.
To communicate.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Chap on the second or third row here, behind you, sir.
How's it going? So we prioritize what goes into the monthly scrum on Jira.
Okay.
And we usually have a discussion on Teams with the main dev for that. And then we actually use Zeplin for our documentation, which is what the devs refer to when creating a component or whatever it is. And then if there's any communication about something that isn't sure, that's then done in Zeplin as well via the comments.
Okay.
And then if anything else has to be updated in terms of documentation, we do that in Figma and then re-upload to Zeplin. So we just find keeping everything on Zeplin is the best place for component-specific communication with the dev team, because it prevents us anything getting lost in Teams chats or in emails or something like that. Because then you can always show the unresolved comments if we have to, if something was missing.
Brilliant. Thank you. Do we have any more tool stacks? Lady in the front here again. What are you using to communicate here?
Well, the design team is using Notion, actually, and Figma.
Okay.
So a combination of the two because, we use Jira for the development teams, but the designers really hate using Jira for the design work.
Yep.
So they use Notion for that. It's a little bit of a combo. And then product board for the product management, so integrated all of it, it's a little bit of a mess.
Okay. So how are you using Notion then? So I heard Figma, Jira, Notion, product board. How are you using Notion?
There's like a product space in Notion where the designers have their own projects that they work on it ahead of time, where we collaborate a lot. between developers, PMs, designers, from that point of view. And then Figma has the actual designs or user workflows.
Yep.
And the difficulty actually with Figma, from my point of view, especially when you transition that to the developers, is if you just send a link to the Figma file, they are going to be like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that? It requires a meeting or someone to walk them through it.
Yep.
You cannot do it without some sort of communication.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Anyone want to throw a hand up? Otherwise, I'll go to the next question. I'm going to keep going until I get kicked off this stage. 3 minutes? Let's go for one last question then. Okay. We've talked about tools. How do you envisage changes in design and development workflows in the next 5 years? Working closer together, about the same, or working further apart? And I want to hear your answer with the why. Okay? Why do you think it will be different in 5 years' time? I'm not surprised by this answer. Okay. So if anyone here answered working closer together, throw your hand up. Let's get some people further at the back, in the bright spots that I can't see, or at the front. Or at the front. That's fine. Let's do that.
I think, just given the accelerated pace at which we have to make changes, I think we need to get more and more responsive. So, you know, the idea of you can be a quarter ahead, you know, that's fading away. We're all seeing it. You know, it's much more a case of, you know, fast changes, and to do that you have to be close together. And if you're in a global organization like I am, that's tricky, because you don't get to huddle in one room with a whiteboard.
Yep.
You've got to figure out better ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Very good.
Can I just throw in there, because I love that answer, but then every person who was saying they were kind of a design sprint ahead said, I'd love to be a bit more. So how do you reconcile that valid point about needing to work together closer with that frustration of laying the track as you're going? Does anybody want to?
Yeah, so I think what we need to realize is that design and development are very intertwined. So we're not separate teams, and that's where we kind of have been up until now. But the future that we're going to is it's just people with different perspectives coming in to do the same work. And that doesn't mean that design has to be done before development, but that both designers and developers and the rest of product and whatever stakeholders you have need to work earlier in the process as a whole to then come up with a solution that has followed that entire process and that you're working on now.
Yeah. I think certainly from the developer's perspective, I know they're keen to get involved earlier in the process as well. Kind of to the opposite of what you were saying there as well. We don't want it to skew too far, where they say, actually, you know what, we don't need the designers at all, because then of course, there's a complete mismatch and a misunderstanding. All right, I think I'm just about done. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your input today. If you have the opportunity to come back and see us tomorrow, then I would love to see you in the audience tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere, Russ. So, first of all, thank you.
Thank you very much.
This was really so much fun and interesting to see how, despite us having these conversations for a very long time, we're still struggling with some pretty fundamental ways of working together, communicating. I really loved your question, the one previous to this one, around how do you communicate design? And being not mean-spirited, but inquisitive, I would have loved to see how you communicate also beyond the binary of design and development. How do you combine that? And there's a wealth of tools, a wealth of ways of doing this, but we're still struggling with that. And it's a good tension to have really good questions. Love the format. I love that everybody could participate.